Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Okay, I have to tell you, I was just looking on eBay where I go for all kinds of things I love, and there it was.
That hologram trading card. One of the rarest, the last one I needed for my set. Shiny like the...
designer handbag of my dreams. One of a kind. eBay had it, and now everyone's asking, ooh, where'd you get your...
windshield wipers. eBay has all the parts that fit my car. No more annoying... just beautiful...
Whatever you love, find it on eBay. eBay. Things people love.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Underrated Movie Podcast. This is a podcast where we discuss films that are underrated, underappreciated, and ones that have slipped under the radar and passed most people by. I am your host, Derek McDuff, and joining me is a returning guest, Matt from the Matt and Mark Movie Show. How's it going, Matt?
Hello. Oh, man, it is so good to be back. I was jealous I didn't get to do your Halloween episode because we had like a scheduling thing, but I'm happy to come back for some post-Halloween magic.
Yeah, I really wanted to have you on this series, which I guess I should say is, it started with the Silent Hill episode for Halloween, and I had to kind of timed everything out perfectly, I felt like, because it was Halloween at the beginning of the series, then I had, another episode, and then I had for episode 150, so last week was the... I guess it's not out of time recording, but so I'll tell you here. It's the Pokemon, the first movie. So the Mewtwo movie was episode 150. I had to time it that way. And then this is the grand finale for the series. So I think it worked out okay.
Well, first off, congratulations on 150 episodes.
Thank you. Huge. But yeah, so today we're going to be talking about another film based on a video game. Although it's more based on a true story involving that video game, but as the credits say, it's based on the video game Gran Turismo. Of course, that would be the film of the same name, Gran Turismo, directed by Neil Blomkamp, starring a number of actors, including David Harbour, Orlando Bloom, and Jaimin Hansu, with Archie Madquay, I believe is how you pronounce his name. I'm so bad with names, in the title role, or the lead role, I should say. But yeah, this is a racing film from PlayStation Productions. They have their own studio. Of course, Sony is a movie studio that also owns PlayStation, but there's a subsidiary that just focuses on adapting their video games, and this is one of their big ones. Matt, what did I'll just give you the floor first. What did you think of Gran Turismo, and do you have any history with the series? I know you're kind of a gamer. What did you think?
Yeah, I'm a retro gamer, just so your audience knows, because I'm old, but part of that retro gaming, was the PS1, and I remember being in my dorm and playing GT2 and GT3. We were big racing gamers in my dorm, and Gran Turismo 2 and Mario Kart were kind of in the rotation.
Hell yeah.
A lot back then. So I'm a big fan of that. Now, I have not played Gran Turismo. I think after somewhere around 6 or 7, I kind of dropped. But all those games kind of start to blend. So it was kind of crazy to see, for me, someone who's used to those polygonal PS1 graphics, to kind of see what the new Gran Turismo looks like, where it looks like real life, right? I'm like, wow, these racing sims have come a long way. But yes, enjoyed the game, was very challenged by Gran Turismo 2. I don't know if you've ever played it, but it was a beast to try to get all the licenses. If you were like actually trying to complete the game and get your license, it was so fucking hard. But I will say the movie, I think, does an incredibly novel job at celebrating what makes the game stand out, right? Racing games are kind of a dime a dozen, right? I think for every 2 good racing games, we've got about 30 shitty ones. But it's really, you look, for every Mario Kart, right? How many, crappy imitations do we have, right? Like SpongeBob Racers and all this other, it's the same thing for these racing sims. I actually think that Gran Turismo probably stood out because of it pushed the boundaries as a game, and as a movie. I think it kind of does a little bit of the same thing, just in terms of just even at the conceptual stage, like you were saying. It's not just an out and out like straight one-to-one video game adaptation. How would you even do that, right? The answer is you make it a movie about someone who plays the game. That's actually really cool. It's a great approach.
Yeah, I really agree, and I was really interested to see that, I think I played a little bit of Gran Turismo back in the day because I was an N64 kid, so I didn't have PlayStation games, but I would always go to my friends' houses, and that was definitely one of the games we played. I would definitely play a lot more Mario Kart and later on Need for Speed. So, this one wasn't one I knew as much about, but there was still a lot of iconography in this that I clocked. And I liked that it did bring in things from the game, like the sounds, the cling, like the little like sound when you like surpass someone or whatever. That was, I thought, was a really nice touch.
Yeah, also too, exactly on that tip, bringing in some of the visual idents from the game. You have like the place markers in the race, the scoreboard. There are even some of the graphics when they start to blend it into reality. Like, I won't say all of them work, but there is a bit where Jan, the main racer, is evading police in real life, and it kind of does an overlay over real life as if it's the game, where it
Yeah.
gives him an award for an achievement for like police
Mhm.
avoidance. And some of those graphics are very Gran Turismo, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I just think it's like a really. I think this is the way I was describing it to somebody who I told I was doing this show, and I was like, hey, I'm going to watch Gran Turismo. And they were like, is that even, they could kind of like laughed it off. And I was like, dude, this movie kind of does something amazing, which is it smashes three things together, in my opinion, and does them very well. Obviously, it smashes Days of Thunder, which is a
Mhm.
racing movie that is essentially about underdogs making it up the racing circuit, into a Field of Dreams-esque movie where it's like, if you build it, we
Yeah.
will come. If you believe it, it can happen, right? The magic of the regular guy getting to do something, and then the granddaddy of them all. Let us not forget one of the best video game movies of all time, not even a video game movie. The Last Starfighter, a movie about a kid who's an arcade player who gets the opportunity to go fight in space. It's kind of the same deal here. This is The Last Starfighter if it happened in real life.
Yeah, for sure. And then, with the Field of Dreams thing, the relationship that he has with his dad, like daddy issues is such a thing in Field of Dreams. And because I do think, yeah, this is a great video game movie and technically a video game adaptation that, like we said, how do you adapt a video game? It's just a racing sim. That has no story. You just race, how do you adapt that into a movie? And we've seen other movies that are in the same genre that even have a lot more story try and do that. Something like Need for Speed, which is just not great. That movie is just like the only good thing about that is just that every time it would cut away to Michael Keaton, be like, these crazy racers, man, they're just going for it. He would just be doing his Michael Keaton schlock. But that movie was rough. But this one, it's like, okay, they took a different approach, and in addition to, like you said, being a good video game movie, it's a good sports movie. Like this is just like you said, with the Field of Dreams thing, I think it hits on the same kind of sports tropes. And patrons out there will know that I'm a big sports movie fan. I did a whole season of a bonus podcast specifically about sports movies and how much I love them. And this really hits on a lot of those things. Like we said, the whole needing your approval from the dad, and Jaimin Hansu gives a really understated great performance in this. He's like this soccer player and he wants the best for his son, but he's like, I don't really believe in you. Like in this, he's like, I want you to follow your dreams, but they got to be realistic dreams. And then that moment they have at the end after he's had the crash and he's like, Dad, I put the sticker on here for you. It really got me. He does a lot of understated acting with like his eyes. So I really wanted to shout out his performance along with the main guy is really good, but you get a lot of like, not elder statesmen, but guys who have been around the block. You have Jaimin Hansu, you have David Harbour, who's really good in this, and then you have one of my favorite Orlando Bloom performances. I find that he can be a little cardboard in a lot of things. Like he's good, but he's like, playing a weird stoic elf, or like a guy he's like, I'm gonna go out to the, like he's just kind of like there, and it's good, but it's not this. Like I feel like he was like kind of like almost slimy. It was a very different side to Orlando Bloom than I'd ever seen before. What did you think about the performances?
I think this is David Harbour's movie. I think he steals it. I think as good as Jaimin Hansu is, David Harbour snuck in the middle of the night and took his performance award, like the fucking hamburger, because that's how good he is. I also want to give a shout to somebody who I had no idea could act, Ginger Spice. Turns out she's a fantastic actress. Where's that Spice Girl been? She's in Gran Turismo. She's acting. She was like a realistic, like a Toni Collette hereditary moment during that crash sequence where she starts to scream in her house, and I totally bought it. For a moment, I forgot it was Ginger Spice. But yeah, David Harbour's amazing. Jaimin Hansu's amazing. The main kid, I'm sorry I forget his name, but that guy who plays Jan Marlborough is awesome. I just think he's like a total find. I don't know if he's popped up in other things, but it's difficult to lead a movie, I think, for any actor, but especially like a young, untested actor. Like, he's not a big name. We don't really know him. They've surrounded him with like these other huge names. So the fact that you're hitching it all to this kid and he's able to pull it off and resonate and make you feel something, make you root for him, that's huge, man. That's acting 101. If you could pull that off, like, that kid's a star, in my opinion. I also like Orlando Bloom, but I have to say, Orlando Bloom kind of gives me a stroke in this movie. Listen, is it Nissan or Nissan?
Right? Oh my gosh, because I've been driving a Nissan for like that's the only car I've ever had, and I'm just like, have I been? Am I crazy or is he crazy?
Derek, have you been driving a Nissan or a Nissan? You may have been driving a Nissan this whole time. Okay,
I'm just like, is that just his accent? Like, what's happening here? You know?
Well, that made me wonder from like, because Sony's got their paw prints all over this, right? So they've got to tie a bunch of people. We've got to tie the PlayStation arm of the company in. We've got to also make a deal with Nissan. So everybody's got to make sure their product is represented respectfully and accurately. So I have to think someone at Nissan heard him say that and was like, maybe it is his accent, but it's technically correct. Or my nightmare is they were pushing him to say it that way, and we've been saying it incorrectly all along.
Right.
And
it's like
or it in.
It reminds me of the Green Knight when I forget his name, but he's like the guy. He's in all the A24 movies. He plays King Arthur in the movie, and he's just like, Gawain, the Green Knight, and I'm just like, apparently David Lowery was like, you know what? If anybody would know how to, I thought it was Sir Gawain in the Green Knight, but if anybody would know how to pronounce this like old English word, it would be this dude. That's what it reminded me of.
Yes, totally. That's probably what happened. I'm going to choose to think we live in a world where it's just Orlando Bloom's accent and not that we have been saying it wrong as a society. I feel like we all have been saying it incorrectly. But yes, Orlando Bloom is good. He has one really good moment that I love, which is the moment where it's at Le Mans, big climactic race in the movie, where he steps onto the podium, or not the podium, but he steps into like the radio, little radio shack where David Harbour's really only supposed to be to radio in to the kid, and he starts talking to him, and the one guy's like, "You got to get out of here," and you can see all the different strings of this guy's life getting pulled at once. Like, he's trying to be the marketing whiz, but he's trying to do what's right, but there's also the natural competitor in him. Like, he wants to win, so he wants to know what's going on, and he's stiffing the other guy who's telling him he's got to go. That's a great Orlando Bloom moment right there. I was like, that guy, that's a scene right there. I really like that moment.
Yeah, that is a particularly good scene, and like I said, you've got Harbour in that scene playing off Orlando Bloom. I think their dynamic is really unique and interesting. And like you said, Harbour does absolutely steal the show in this. I think he is phenomenal. Just giving, like, he's always good, but I think like this is definitely one of his most memorable film performances, at least. Where because even like in the Marvel movies, he's good, but he's kind of like goofy, where he's a lot more. Like, you get to see, like, this stoic, that scene he gives about, like, the Ford, like, vibrating and, his hands were on fire. That was, like, if this movie had been promoted differently, if it had been received a little bit better, I could really see it as an awards bait movie, and that would have been, like, the scene that played, like, David Harbour nominated for Best Supporting Actor. That would have been it. But speaking of Le Mans, I love all the different races in this. That's one thing that racing movies I think have to deal with is, like, how do we differentiate each race? Because there's, in sports movies in general, but especially racing movies, because it's just like a guy sitting in a car making turns. And it's more interesting when it's Formula One than NASCAR, because it's NASCAR, it's just a circle. But I don't know too much about NASCAR. But this, they do a really good job of differentiating it, making it feel like the game, but also making it feel like real life. And I love that the conclusion is Le Mans, just because I kind of love the idea of Le Mans. And I know it's not like as big of a deal in recent times, but I think, and I'm not a big racing person. My best friend is a really big racing person, so through her, I know a little bit about this. But just like Ford v Ferrari, another really great, fun racing movie that has this big ending. It's like, it's just so cool. It's like, yeah, it's this 24-hour race. You just got to drive through the day, keep going. You'll swap some people out through the rain and whatever. There's all these different twists and turns, and it's like, here's the straight. So I thought that is just like a great capper to the film, and I love that they also at that time are like, because it is the story really of just Jan, but then you kind of do the thing which I love in movies where they're like, remember all these characters from the beginning? Well, guess what? They're coming back to help the hero out at the end. I'm a real sucker for that shit, and that they're like, yeah, we're gonna do it as gamers. And they were like, we're gonna get third place, and it's like, if I'm like, that's the big thing. It's like, not that they're gonna win Le Mans, but their goal is to get third place. And then when they do, they're like popping champagne and stuff, like they're world champions. Like, cool, like bronze medal's not nothing. You're on the podium, but I just thought that was a little funny moment. But yeah, really cool finale. I felt like.
Oh, 100%. It's funny, too, that you said that because I'm also not a real world racing guy. I'm not fancy enough to be into Formula One, and I'm not lowbrow enough to be into NASCAR. It's just a world that I don't know much about, but racing movies kick ass. And funny enough, it's become something I think that is now part of the cinephile consciousness, especially this year, because we started the year with Ferrari, Michael Mann's Ferrari. We just had Ford v Ferrari, and both of those movies climax with Le Mans, just like Gran Turismo does.
Yeah.
So there is this new kind of trend happening in your racing movie where you climax at Le Mans. And I was just kind of touched by, here's the thing. I want to say something visually about this movie that I think might be a little controversial. I want to go on the record and say, I think Neil Blomkamp has only made 2 good movies. I think he's made many crappy movies. I think District 9 is unquestionably the best thing that guy has made and maybe will ever make. Gran Turismo is the second best Neil Blomkamp movie. I'm not even kidding. And I think it rivals visually, at least if you look at the cinematic language between 2 movies. I'm going to compare Michael Mann, one of the best directors working, legend. The way that he shoots racing in Ferrari versus the way Neil Blomkamp shoots it in Gran Turismo, I'm going to tell you, Neil Blomkamp holds his own visually with Michael Mann, at least when it comes to racing, at least when it comes to Le Mans. He does a lot of interesting things. My one gripe, it giveth and taketh away. My one gripe is I hate the drone shit. I hate drones in movies. It's enough. We've seen it. All the drone shit to me looks the same. No one's doing anything interesting with it. I think Michael Bay took the drone thing and made it awful, and now everybody does drones. The cool thing where this movie succeeds visually is when Neil Blomkamp relies on those old school, kind of like Michael Mann tricks. Like, one of my favorite shots in this movie, and it's such a simple effect, is instead of when the camera's moving, there's a moment at Le Mans where the camera's totally stationary on the track, and just so you can get the timing between racers, one car whips by, zoom, and it makes you count 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, and then the other car comes by, just so you can get the distance count. That is good race filmmaking. That puts you in the driver's seat. That makes you feel like you're in the race. There are also some really clever stuff, especially at Le Mans, like once the rain comes in, just that atmosphere of seeing that darkness and the rain roll in over those headlights. You know that it's dangerous. You see the vapor waves coming off the cars as they're making those turns in the rain. Exactly what Michael Mann does, funny enough, in Ferrari, but for some reason I liked it a lot more here. So kudos to Neil Blomkamp.
Yeah, I think Blomkamp is a very, very visually driven, not pardon the pun, visually driven director, right? And I think that really comes through here. There's a video essay that I would say anybody who is interested in racing movies should watch. I forget what exactly it's called, but it's a video essay by one of my favorite YouTubers, Patrick Willems, where he talks about action movies and specifically about racing movies. I really recommend checking out because he does touch on a lot of that stuff. He doesn't bring up, I don't think, Gran Turismo in the video, but he talks about how it is difficult to really convey that speed, and a lot of directors have a really hard time with it. And it was, if you go back to like before, like the 50s or something, it was all in these like, they had the rear projections, but then more modern films like this do a very good job of showing that speed, but it's still hard. You still need to have those little tricks to show you how quick these things are going and how fast and dangerous it is. Because, and especially because there is that whole arc in the middle of the movie at this, or at the end of the second act when he like has that really fucking gnarly crash, and it just like not physically but mentally really fucks him up because of some, of the fatality and stuff, and how hard that is for him to overcome. And then him and Harbor have that really good heart to heart moment. I think, yeah, the visual style in this, the way the racing was portrayed, is stellar. Interestingly enough, when I was like looking up this movie in my half-assed research, I found out that Joseph Kosinski, director of the more recent Mission Impossible films, who has a very distinct visual style, he's very visually like all the set pieces and stuff like that, was originally going to make this movie. He dropped out. Got replaced with Blumkamp. And as everybody knows, because it's such a huge budget, he is making his own Formula One movie now. So I'm just really curious to see what that's going to be, because it felt like okay, he got bit by the F1 bug probably when doing this production. For whatever reason, he drops out, gets replaced by Blumkamp. How much of that still, the Kosinski stuff crosses over, we'll never know. But I do think that's very interesting that he still kept up with that, and it still has that very quick style from a Blumkamp. And yeah, I kind of love that Blumkamp did this because, and I'm not the first person to say this, but I think that he feels there's some parallels you can really draw between Jan in this and Blumkamp himself, where he's this kind of young, hot guy who kind of comes out of nowhere. He has a very famous mentor who's like one of the best. Obviously, Peter Jackson is Blumkamp's mentor. Boom, right at the gate. People are like, this is the new hot kid, right? He's kind of the wonderkin. He does a lot of stuff digitally and stuff like that, so has that technology background the same way Jan does, and then has some major stumbles in the second act. No shade to Chappie, but that's not exactly a beloved movie. But then he kind of feels like this is his coming back to it, getting this victory lap. I don't know. What did you think about any of that?
The number one selling product of its kind with over 20 years of research and innovation. Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
I'm James McComb, reporting live from home in my bathrobe and slippers. Tonight, we're talking Dunkin' Polar Peppermint Coffee. Gene's here with the latest. Gene, do you copy?
The home with Dunkin' is where you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's Blumkamp has also had many. I think what hurts most about Blumkamp is not the Elysiums and the Chappies and even that horrible Exorcism movie that he made. I think it's the movies he was supposed to get that he didn't get. Like he was supposed to make an Alien 5. He was supposed to make a new RoboCop. There were things that were coming into his ecosystem that felt like, okay, well, maybe this could be a return to form for the guy. And they slipped through his hands for whatever reason, creative differences, or maybe the studios booted him, they got shy, whatever. But I think it's so cool to see him handle this. Now, I want to quickly touch on what you said about Joseph Kosinski, because I think, I think Joseph Kosinski, is going to nail that Formula One movie because he nailed Top Gun Maverick. But I think he's the wrong director for Gran Turismo. I think Gran Turismo has the heart. It has the element of the kid trying to connect, trying to make his way, right? It's an underdog story. I think somehow Neil Blomkamp gets that, and Joseph Kosinski doesn't. I think what Joseph Kosinski does, if Top Gun Maverick and his like smoke jumper movie with Josh Brolin, if that's like
Only the Brave,
one of those. And it has like
I just watched. It's pretty good. Just aside, it's a pretty good movie.
Good movie. Okay, but what that guy does is give you a real he puts you, the audience, in the real world experience of what these guys go through. Fighter pilots, smoke jumpers, like it's very much about immersing you in this crazy occupation, larger than life, holy shit, versus the heart. I don't get a lot of heart from Top Gun Maverick as much as I'm like, wow, look at these awesome professionals doing shit professionally that at that level. That's great. I think Blomkamp is able to, I didn't know he had it in him, man, but he's able to deliver the heart. Like, he's able to pay that off. There are, aside from this movie being intensely watchable, there are some really good emotional moments that hit. Like you're saying, that scene between David Harbour and the kid when he brings him out and he explains his backstory. Also, when Jaimin Hansu shows up at the race, when they get reunited, those tears that come, like, it feels great. It really does truly give you those, for lack of a better phrase, it gives you those Rocky feelings right at the end.
Yeah.
It feels right. So yeah, kudos to Neil Blomkamp, man. I do think it was weird how Sony kind of marketed this movie. They were like, you know, when the gamer to real racer angle wasn't working, they then hitched their wagon to like based on a true story. Like, even if you watch this on Netflix, the title that comes up on your UI is Gran Turismo based on a true story. That's not the title. The title is Gran Turismo.
It's weird.
Yes.
Right. That was something I can clock too when watching on Netflix. I was like, I don't remember that from seeing it in the theaters or anything like that. It was weird.
Yes, that's the thing. Is like it really faced adversity even through the fucking publicity stage, even through the stage. It's like nobody can make a decision about how they want to correctly market this movie. So it feels like it's an underdog in itself to like make its way, you know. But it's not pretty, but it's a good quality racing movie. Like, when I think of the racing movies, especially, you know, we just name dropped a bunch of them, but like, I think this one's up there just because of that emotional pull and the unique hook of it being about a gamer becoming the real world racer. Like, that's different and unique enough to set it apart. But I'll tell you this, that crash is fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's got nothing on the crash in Cars 3. I'm gonna throw that dice down.
That crash in Cars 3, like that, because that crash was so good. That was the entire first trailer that they just were like, boom, and then like nothing else in the movie was like that good. So you're just like, whatever. But like that crash was so incredible.
That crash was incredible. That's like the best crash in any racing movie. I'm sorry, it beats every Days of Thunder. It beats all the shit in Ferrari. That's the crash in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. But yeah, really good crashes. And gotta correct myself. I know I said Kaczynski directed Mission Impossibles. I know that's McQuarrie. They're one of those are like the two Tom Cruise director guys. So I just gotta mix up my head before anybody sends an email. Just I caught myself.
He did Oblivion with Tom Cruise. I think that's what you were thinking.
Yeah, he did Oblivion and then Top Gun. So it was worked with him. Yeah, he's worked with him a couple times. But yeah, I think those are all really good points about Blomkamp having this passion, you know, and you know he's had all these movies slip through his fingers. This is the first movie that he's made that has been based on an IP, and I think it's not a coincidence that it is a video game movie because, and this is kind of the grand arc that I've been talking about in this miniseries and these last 4 episodes is that now video game movies are kind of a big thing. Like in the 90s and then even in the early 2000s, it would just be like you would not get even somebody who he's not necessarily at the top of his game, but is a well-respected Academy Award nominated dude. Neil Blomkamp is not going to come in and direct your video game movie. You're going to get some Eurotrash. You're going to get your Paul Anderson or your Uwe Boll or whoever, right? And you start getting
only the best.
Exactly. And you start, like I said in the Silent Hill episode, you start eventually getting people who have a little passion, but they're not necessarily the biggest guys known to American audiences. You get the director of that movie's French director. You get Takeshi Miike, who directs Ace Attorney, which never even comes out in the States. But now, okay, and I know he's still a foreign director, Neil Blomkamp, South African, but he is a guy who Americans know. That is, has box office worldwide appeal. You're getting big name actors, not even in the title or in this main role. You're getting your Harbours, your Hansus, and of course your Orlando Bloom. He's a big actor. Everybody knows who Orlando Bloom is, and it's got a big budget. It's got a big push. This is a movie that, had it been received a little better, maybe even gets some awards nominations. It doesn't quite do that. People like it, but it does okay at the box office, and that's it does okay with critics. That's why it's underrated. It underperforms a little bit. But this is, I think, that's why I wanted to end it with this film, right? Because the video game landscape in 2023 is so different than it was even in like 2013 or something, where the most prestigious video game movie was like fucking Prince of Persia or some shit, you know? Now it's completely different, where you are going to start seeing these things where, like I said, Sony made an entire studio to make shit based on their video games.
Yes, and what was Uncharted another one of their productions? Because I gotta say,
Uncharted?
if it was, Gran Turismo is still the best thing that's come out of PlayStation Studios.
Yes, I think I have it pulled up here. Yeah, so I think they've only made two movies, which are Gran Turismo and Uncharted, and then they've also made two shows, Twisted Metal and The Last of Us. So
okay. No slouch.
Solid batting average, I would say, on those.
I want to look, everybody's talking about Last of Us, and rightfully so. But listen, I want to give a shout out to Twisted Metal because it's actually quite fun. If you're into Twisted Metal or you just want to watch some dumb, fun, like 90s nostalgia with Sweet Tooth, it's a fun watch. You could wrap it up in an afternoon, and they're coming back for a season 2.
Yeah, it's something I need to check out. I remember seeing like bits and pieces of it. It seemed fun. They've also got, I'm looking at their stuff now. They've also got some interesting stuff in the pipes, including looks like they're going to make a God of War TV show and a Ghost of Tsushima movie. So like, I think that really speaks to the future we're getting for these video game adaptations. And I know a lot of people have been saying like superhero movies are out, video game movies are in. I don't know if we're at that point yet, but we're going to see some stuff, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I'm actually quite surprised they're going the TV route with God of War. I feel like God of War feels cinematic.
Right, yeah.
Surprised they're going that route.
That.
You know what? Our TV is in it's already been in its golden age. It's going to continue to be amazing. So maybe that is the right step. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not a Netflix executive. These people are, and they clearly saw potential. I did want to ask you about this, since you're doing this whole video game series.
Mm-hmm.
Do you? I know there was a bit of a hesitation there, but it is a video game movie, even though it doesn't technically feel like one, right? I mean, how does it stack up for you with the other video game movies you've been featuring on the pod?
Yeah, because this is something I kind of went back and forth with, and something I talked about a lot is like video game movies. I think were not great for a while because people were trying to figure out how to adapt this medium, and they hadn't. But I was thinking about it, and like, yeah, it's like we said, it's not a real adaptation. The video game, there's definitely stuff in it, but some of the other video game movies, like some of them are pretty accurate. Ace Attorney is pretty much just the game, but Pokemon the first movie, that's more of an adaptation of the show, which is loosely based on the games to the point where, and I brought this up on the episode, to the point where they actually had to go back and like make Pokemon Yellow because people were like, the games are not like the show that I watch, So I think that there is a lot of wiggle room when it comes to adaptations. And for me, it's always been about, do you capture kind of the soul of what you're adapting? It doesn't have to necessarily, and that's something that I took away from, I was reading William Goldman's books, and he talks about adaptations towards the end. And he's like, it couldn't be, you can change the setting, you can change all the stuff, as long as you're kind of really getting to the crux of the message and the soul of it. And in this case, I think the feeling of the racing in Gran Turismo, which I think this does really well, I think it's a good adaptation.
Yeah, I would agree. It's fun. It's funny. I think up to this point, right? Like we're now getting quote unquote good video game movies, right? The Super Mario Brothers movies. Some people liked Uncharted. I didn't like Uncharted. Last of Us is a shining example that people like to point to, but it's kind of refreshing. We still have the crappy video game movies. Borderlands just happened, right? I don't think that's going to be featured on Underrated anytime soon.
Right? No.
But I would love to hear that episode. But I do think it's funny because it's the opposite of the usual problem. The usual problem with video game movies is, oh my God, how do we squeeze all this lore and all the stuff that fans want to see in the games, but also make it function as like a 2-hour movie in 3 acts? How do we jam that all into 120 minutes or less, hopefully, so we can fit in as many screenings as possible during the day? And that's the problem. Gran Turismo is the opposite problem. There's no lore. It's all mechanics. Mm-hmm. That's it. So it's like it's got to smash itself into other stories. All right. We're going to hyper stylize this guy's true story, but we're also going to have this cool angle about a sim racer becoming a real racer. That's a great idea, and I do think that carries it. But it's funny because I think it's a great racing movie. It's an interesting video game movie, but it doesn't, to me, at the end of the day, it doesn't feel like a true video game movie. It almost feels like it flows too well. like it's, you know what I mean? There's kind of that natural thing where you can sense the filmmakers in these other video game adaptations like really trying to squeeze everything they can. And then it affects pacing and it affects mood and tone. And here, everything flows so well, you kind of forget that Gran Turismo is a video game. Like, if the movie didn't keep reminding you, like, hey, here's a shot of him, he's racing the car, and then it comes apart to show you that he's thinking about it like he is back in his dorm room playing Gran Turismo on a computer, or the fact that somebody always makes fun of him for being a gamer. Like, if that stuff didn't happen, I'm willing to bet if they dropped all that talk in the first act, you would forget Gran Turismo was a video game. I think you would just be like, it's a race. That's it.
That's fair, because when I was trying to come up, I was like, I really want to talk about a modern movie, something that's come out in the last year or two to cap off the series, to talk about where we've come in terms of video game movies. And this is what I really want to talk about, because I said I think it's a good movie. I think it does a lot of stuff from the game as well. And it is technically in the credits. It does say based on the video game Gran Turismo. And I'm like, where do I draw the line between something like that and Tetris? Because Tetris is clearly not adapting the game Tetris where there's just blocks falling. It's adapting, like this, a story surrounding Tetris. Once again, very loosely. And Tetris also has like some graphics where there's blocks falling and you see some stuff. But for me, those are both on one side of, like, if you're going to draw a line on like what counts as an adaptation and what doesn't, I think that Gran Turismo just falls, and maybe it is just because that's how it's credited, but I'll go with it. I think it falls just right on the side of this counts, whereas Tetris falls on the other side of no, this doesn't count. If that makes sense.
Yes, Tetris absolutely. That was beautifully explained, because Tetris totally falls on the Pixel side. Because you could say, well, isn't Pixels a Pac-Man movie and a Q*bert movie and a whatever movie? You could be like, no, it's fucking Pixels, right? Yes, right. Clear delineation. I agree. I think you have firmly convinced me, because I kept flipping the coin while I was watching. I just rewatched the movie right before this record, and I kept flipping the coin of like, does it feel like a video game movie? Because I just watched Borderlands, and I got to tell you, that felt like a video game movie, and not in a good way. It was like, yep, I remember how this goes. I remember how this feels. I remember these old feelings. These aren't the good kind of nostalgic feelings. These are the bad kind. And then watching today, by the end credits, I was like, oh, right, yes. Like, because that's the other thing. It's like they never tie it back. They never bookend it with like him. You see the pictures of the real guy like playing at the GT Academy, but like they hook it on the true story angle, because the last thing you're left with is, hey, the real Jan Marlborough is here, and he was his own stunt double in his own movie. That's a great, incredible moment. At least I thought. I was like, I'm reaching that old man phase of my life where I'm super impressed by that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And
that was again, in my notes too.
Yeah, the last thing I'm thinking of is video game. I'm thinking, oh, cool, it's this true story, larger than life story of this guy. I don't know how you make it feel more video gamey, but I think your Tetris argument definitely has flipped my coin to being video game. I'm firmly on that video game side now.
And yeah, talking about, the underdogness of him, and him being a gamer, I think that's something that a lot of sports movies do really well, is where you have this group of outsiders who are not accepted by the kind of hierarchy, the sports people. And, one of my all-time sports movies is League of Their Own. Was the finale to my Underdogs Patreon series. And, that's a whole movie about nobody wanted girls in baseball. They couldn't accept girls in baseball or whatever. And this is kind of that similar thing. It's like, these guys aren't real racers. These guys are just some video game nerds or whatever. They don't know what they're doing. And the fact that they were like able to like actually get on the podium at Le Mans, a team of gamers who they like, everyone's like, yeah, no, nobody's going to give them the time of the day or whatever. This is just a marketing ploy that Orlando Bloom cooked up or whatever. I think that the whole outsiders thing, you'll love to see a group of underdogs. And, like, nobody makes a sports movie about the great, like how this team was supposed to win it all and then did. That's not interesting. That's not a cool story. You don't want to root for that. What you want to root for is the little guy. You know, the people who people are like society's telling you, no, you can't do this thing. Even your dad, who is super supportive, is saying, I want you to follow your dreams. I love you. I don't want you to end up working the fucking construction yard from Unstoppable with me. I want you to fucking get out there and like follow your dreams as long as they're realistic. But he really he sticks to his guns, and that's something that I have felt really like as a writer and a podcaster, is that sometimes you're following these impossible dreams. And I'm gonna get a person here, but like then sometimes you have these moments, like when I got to have that panel at Comic-Con was so fucking surreal, and I'm sure you had a ton of moments like that yourself, where you're just like, no, cool, like I'm living the dream right now, and that doesn't happen every day, but it's such a cool fucking experience, and that's what I think this movie does. Is anybody who is a dreamer, who has a goal, can relate to this movie.
Oh, beautifully said, 100%.
Thank you.
And that ties it right back into the Field of Dreams. It's Field of Dreams, man. Chasing the dream, making the dream possible. Yeah. But you see, like, it connects. It connects in a way that it got you on a human level. A video game movie about a racing simulator got you. That makes it a great movie. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, we're not, even though, listen, I love Silent Hill. I'm a huge fan of Silent Hill. But at the end of the day, is it something that gets me in the chops? No. But this is a movie that, like, I felt things at the end. Maybe I'm just an easy mark for sports movies or underdog stories, but it got me. And I don't think that's any small feat. I think anytime your movie can connect like that with somebody, that's a win. That's a win.
Yeah, that's really well put. I completely wholeheartedly agree. Yeah, but any final thoughts on any stray thoughts that you wanted to add on Gran Turismo here?
Yeah, I did just want to say, I saw that there was, I did some light reading about it. I tried not to be too well read on this because I don't want to just come back and parrot a bunch of things I saw in an article. But I did see somebody complaining online about the fact that they included the crash at I'm gonna butcher the name of this city. Not Nuremberg. Nuremberg was World War II. It sounds like Nuremberg, but it's like Hindenburg, something like that. Right? I apologize to your German listeners or Austrian listeners, but I saw people were like, "How dare you glamorize because that crash happened and someone did die, a spectator did die." And to me, I think that is total bullshit. I think this is a true story. If it really happened, it should be included. I'm of the opinion that if something like that is excised and taken out, it looks much worse because it looks like you're trying to revise history and make it like this person's death didn't mean anything, didn't carry any weight. I think it is the opposite of what the intended goal is. So I'm glad it's in the movie. I don't think anybody should be complaining about that, but I saw that there was all this, I know there's outrage about everything. But I do think it's a little ridiculous that there was outrage over a true thing that happened. If you gloss over that you do a giant disservice to this person who actually passed. I did want to just say that. I don't think it glamorizes it. I think if anything, it shows you how awful it is for everyone involved, including the main guy. Like, there's a moment where you're like, that guy's going to leave racing. Like, I get it. Yes, because it's in a movie, it's used in a dramatic way to show you the character at a low point so that he wants to come back. But like, that's what a movie is. So I did just want to say that. I think it's okay for something like that to be included here. Glossing over it feels like revisionist history and feels like a disservice and a slap in the face to the actual person who died. Rest in peace. I will end on a lighter note and just say again, Ginger Spice, where have you been? You were great. What the hell?
Right. She's so good. I'm going to be covering Spice World at an episode in the future. I've got my guests lined up. We've had some scheduling problems, but I'm very stoked to talk about that because I was also surprised. I kind of forgot it was her in this movie. Like, I didn't even clock it until you said it. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, that is Ginger Spice.
I was floored. Listen, I was floored because I watched some reality show. My wife was watching it, and I saw like Mel B, Scary Spice, and Emma. I know all their names, and Baby Spice. They were together, so I was like, "Oh, cool! What happened to the other Spice Girls?" Right? Well, we know what happened to Posh, and nobody knows what happened to the Sporty Spice when she just kind of vanished. And I was like, "Where's Ginger Spice?" Because that to me, it's like Scary Spice and Ginger Spice were the two Spice Girls that everybody like knows. Mm-hmm. And to see her pop up again in Gran Turismo, I was like, "That's where she is. She's an actor." And she does a fucking great job in this. So hopefully she turns up in some other stuff, man. I was quite impressed.
Yeah, she was good. I would love to see her in more stuff. And I also want to shout out, do my best with his name, Takahiro Hira, who he's an actor who he's like one of those guys. He's like a character actor. He plays the creator. Like he doesn't have a huge role, but he's got this kind of stoicism to him. He plays the creator of Gran Turismo in this. I thought he was good. So yeah, some really great performances all around, and yeah, so I think really well put. My last question for you before I get you out of here is: do you have any favorite video game movies that you want, or shows, adaptations, however you want to put it, that you wanted to mention here? What's some of your favorites?
Yes, thank you. This is the part of the show I love the most when you do this. Okay. I want to give a shout out just because I recently got the Arrow Video 4K set of the original Super Mario Brothers movie with Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo. I know it's viewed as one of the worst movies ever, but I have to tell you, I'm glad that history's coming around on it and people are being kinder to it. Is it a Mario Brothers movie? No, but that's kind of what makes it awesome.
Yeah.
It's just this weird dystopian other movie that happens to kind of star the Mario Brothers, and it's such an oddity. It's by default one of my favorite video game movies ever made because of the giant swing and potential disaster it could have been and how much of a unique, weird experience it is. If you haven't seen it in a while, highly recommend going to check that out. On the newer tip, I liked that new Super Mario. I'm also a Mario fan. I like that new Super Mario animated movie. I thought it was cute, but I really did like Twisted Metal. I thought it was a lot of fun. I think it's worth your time. I will say, I confess, I have not finished all of Last of Us, but I know that it was, the stuff that I saw was tremendous. I need to go back and finish that, especially as that new season is coming. I think the cool thing about video game movies is they're becoming more popular now. They're getting this kind of reputation. We have a lot of room to grow. That's what's exciting. Nobody has come out and been like, this is the best video game thing ever created. Even those new Sonic movies, those are great too. I want to give those credit too, because I really do like them. But no one has come out and done like a shutout Marvel Endgame, like, oh man, game changer. This is the best video game thing ever made. So it's kind of exciting because you have all this untapped potential. I can't wait to see. I mean, the fan in me is excited for the potential of a Legend of Zelda movie. I'm excited to see what a Donkey Kong Country movie could look like, especially if it goes the kiddie route animated. I know Zelda's going to go live action. Like, there's going to be cool stuff happening. There's a lot of room to grow. It's cool. But if you're going to look back, I'd say both Super Mario Brothers and Twisted Metal for me.
Yes, solid picks for sure. I won't dwell too much on the Zelda movie because I talked about it a lot in another episode. But yeah, I mean, fingers crossed that that's the fucking video game end game. Like that's the fucking like Avengers end game of video game movies. That I mean, I will cry during that movie one way or the other, whether it's tears of disappointment or of pure joy. Who knows? But it's going to happen. But yeah, I'll just throw out, because I've been talking about a lot of my own favorite video game movies in this series. The last one I wanted to mention is a smaller one from 2021 that, like this, is barely based on the video game that it's adapting, which is Werewolves Within, which is kind of like that werewolf game, but like done in like a video game, and it's like kind of spooky and medieval from my understanding. But it's just it's basically Clue with werewolves is what the movie adaptation is. It also was the first video game movie to ever get a positive score on Rotten Tomatoes, or I think it has the highest score on Rotten Tomatoes, is what it is. It's the only certified fresh one as of this recording. It's good. It's got Sam Richardson, who's really funny, underrated actor, and it's got Mila Vantrub in it, who people would probably know as the AT&T girl, and she is really good. So if you're looking for something a little bit different from your video game movies, highly recommend checking out Werewolves Within. I think it's on Shudder right now.
Excellent pick. That's a great movie.
Thank you. You've seen it? So
I love it. Yeah, I love Werewolves.
Okay, nice.
I'm a sucker for horror comedy, anything horror comedy. I had no idea that was even a video game. Like I'm finding out about it. You're watching me discover this in real time. I'm gonna have to look that up now. I just saw the movie because I was like, hey, I love werewolf movies and I love horror comedies, and Sam Richardson is the fucking best. So it was like a hat trick of hey, I gotta see this, and I loved it. It's such a fun movie. Clue with werewolves is such an accurate description of that movie. And it goes there. It goes places. Another good werewolf fake out movie is Wolves of Snow Hollow, but I got to give it to Werewolves Within. Werewolves Within is awesome.
Okay, excellent. You've got the double recommendation from us now, listeners. So yeah.
Get on it.
But yeah, Matt, before we get out of here, I mentioned you host, or you're half the host of the Matt and Mark Movie Show. What did you want to let the people know about the show and everything?
Yes, thank you for having me on, Derek. It's always a pleasure podcasting with you. I always have a blast when I'm on the show. It's fun to always kind of like dig up these underappreciated movies. You give me a lot to think about every time I'm on. More so than my own show, which is the Matt and Mark Movie Show. Hey, segue. A show where we cover some new releases, mostly the schlocky, nostalgic 80s, 90s, 2000s stuff that me and my longtime best buddy, Mark, love to just talk about and wax philosophical about for a couple hours each week. We just dropped a retro review for Showgirls. We decided America needed to heal, and the way to do that was by watching Showgirls. So we did that, and we just wrapped up a whole month of horror episodes. They've all been really fun. This is our favorite time of year, so it's always the sad hangover when Halloween ends. But we've had a really fun time. Do check us out, the Matt and Mark Movie Show. We're on Instagram, and we have a regular podcast. We try to keep it weekly. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I always listen when I can. It's really good stuff. You guys had some great horror episodes come out this year. Some of the movies that I had seen, some I was actually like trying to catch up on to actually hear your guys' thoughts on it, because you guys always have really on horror movies, but on all movies. So highly recommend anybody listening check that out.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm in trouble. And then I'll also mention, of course, in addition to Underrated, on opposite Mondays, I co-host another show called the Midnight Film Society. We just kind of talk about more recent releases. It's a lot less structured. And just kind of what have you been watching and stuff like that. And then I mentioned the Patreon. Got a whole season out. So if you like this movie, like sports movies, got a whole season, 12 episodes on sports films, some of the best sports films of all time. On that, next took a little bit of a hiatus from that. Those are all still available on the Patreon, though. And the Patreon bonus show for next year is going to be called Across the Second Dimension, where I'm going to be looking at movies that originally came out in 3D and seeing how they hold up in 2D, starting with Jaws 3. So I am very excited for that. So definitely.
Good luck, Derek.
Some of them I'm like, okay, you know what? Coraline, I think it's going to hold up. Jason or Friday the 13th Part 3, maybe not as much.
I can tell you, I just watched Jason Part 3, and it does not hold up. And I've also rewatched Jaws 3D, and buddy, it does not hold up. Good luck with that.
It's going to be an experience, so it'll be fun to talk about stuff that's maybe not as underrated on that show. So definitely tune into that. Episodes on the Patreon also come out a week early and ad-free for as low as $1. You can sign up for that. There's all kinds of other bonus stuff that I put out there on the Patreon too. So if you're a listener, I would love to have you. You're not in the Patreon thing though. If you want to just give us 5 stars, that is also super appreciated. But yeah, one more time, Matt, thank you so much for coming on. This was an absolute blast.
Oh, hell yeah, man. Anytime. Gran Turismo. By the way, everybody, I leave you with this. Nissan.